So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the sixth session in SCAG's Traffic Safety Peer Exchange series. My name is Anika Benail, and I am a junior planner here at SCAG, focused on equity, transportation safety, and performance measurement. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'll be facilitating today's session along with Drew Van Hengel, a senior principal with Nelson Nygaard, who is one of our consultants that are supporting this project. And at this time, again, if you haven't already, we really encourage you to type your name, your pronouns, and your organization into the chat feature. This will help us better understand who's in the room and also ensure that that chat feature is working for you. Next slide, please. This peer exchange is anticipated to run for about an hour and a half. Right now, all participant lines should be muted as we get started. At the end of each presentation, we'll have about time for maybe one or two questions. And then at the end of all the presentations, this will be followed by a panel Q&A and a facilitated discussion. If at any point you have a question during the presentation, please type it directly into the chat box. And then if you think of something later, you can reach out to myself directly or Courtney Aguirre, whose email is listed there, or contact the presenter directly. Finally, all presentations following today's session will be emailed to those who registered to participate in today's meeting. As staff at SCAG, I acknowledge that we are on the land of the Chumash, Tongva, and Quiche people. As we acknowledge that we are on the original lands of the Chumash, Tongva, and Quiche peoples, and also recognize how deeply the field of urban planning continues to engage with land. We offer this acknowledgement as a first step towards moving towards more conversations and actions that will support Indigenous communities in thriving. So today's presentations, we will have a regionally specific peer exchange that will be focused on presentations around traffic safety issues facing communities in Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino. To wrap up after these presentations, we will have a panelist Q&A, and then this will be followed by a facilitated group discussion where you can chat more directly with today's speakers as well as with each other. So to start things off, I'd like to just share a very brief update on our region's existing conditions to provide some context of why we're holding these traffic safety peer exchanges. I'm also going to share just a brief update as well about our GoHuman education and encouragement campaign and some resources that are available to you as you work to reduce fatalities and serious injuries within your own community. Next slide, please. Now, as many of you are aware, our region is home to about 19 million people, about half the entire state's population, and about 13 million drivers. Each year, on average, about 1,500 people die, 5,500 people are seriously injured, and about 124,000 people sustain injuries in traffic collisions within our region. We anticipate that as the region emerges from the pandemic, the rates of fatalities and serious injuries may continue to rise, particularly as people shift away from using public transit or shared vehicles. And the thing is, collisions are occurring in every community in our region, from Thousand Oaks in Ventura to El Centro and Imperial. However, the vast majority, over 70%, occur in urban areas, and almost 70% of fatal and serious injury collisions occur on local roads. Across the region, about a quarter of collisions are a result of unsafe speed. And this is particularly important to note as the survivability in a collision decreases significantly with increases in speed. Next slide, please. This information and a more detailed analysis is included in our Regional Transportation Existing Conditions report. We'll link directly to that in the chat. And then we just completed an update of this report. And if you haven't already seen this, already heard, some of these quick facts, we also have in the report a much more detailed breakdown, both by region and by county. And then in our efforts to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities within our region, we also engage in a variety of efforts, including these peer exchanges, which we're in right now, as well as our GoHuman campaign. Next slide, please. So the GoHuman campaign was launched in 2015 to reduce traffic collisions and encourage people to walk and bike more. Since then, GoHuman activities have expanded the conversation into 3 major categories of programs. The first we have here is co-branded safety messaging materials, which you can request right now for your community on the GoHuman website at absolutely no cost. These come in different forms like the lawn signs, banners, and bus shelter ads as pictured here. In addition, you'll see in the middle here, we have GoHuman also provides a kit of parts at no cost. And so this kit of parts is a set of modular pieces that can be assembled to demonstrate different street design treatments like parklets, bulb outs, and crosswalks. And the kit also comes with marketing materials. So this shows you how a typical street can transform into one that really centers the pedestrian and bicyclist user. And then finally here, we have a variety of safety workshops, webinars, and technical assistance that we offer. Recently, we had a Community Streets mini grants. These are a funding program that are really meant to build street level community resilience and increase the safety of people most harmed by collisions. Grant awardees from these mini grants will be announced at the end of this month, and activations will be starting soon, starting later this summer. And then finally, we also have a new Community Ambassadors program, which is a participatory planning and leadership series that's taking place in the counties of Imperial, San Bernardino, and Ventura counties. Next slide, please. And so as all of you guys hopefully know, you're already participating in the Traffic Safety Peer Exchange series. This is part of GoHuman's ongoing efforts to increase traffic safety. You can visit the GoHuman website that's listed here, gohumansocal.org, to register for more traffic safety peer exchanges and to learn more about these other programs that I just detailed. And finally, you can keep up with the GoHuman programs and what's going on by signing up for the quarterly newsletter, and then also following GoHuman on social media at GoHuman SoCal. Now I'll turn it over to Drew.
Thank you, Anika. So just to help kick things off, we'd like to get a sense of where you all are coming from to be with us today and how you engage with the community. This will help us as we move forward with the presentations as well as our facilitated group discussion. So the first poll question will be put up by our AV team is, do you live, work, or play in Orange, Riverside, or San Bernardino County? And then the second poll question is grassroots-led engagement a key part of the work you do? So we'll just give you a moment to fill that out. And then Edgar, if you can share the results. So 54% of you do work, live, or play in Orange, Riverside, or San Bernardino County, and 62% of you indicated that grassroots-led engagement is a key part of the work that you do. So thank you so much for completing that poll. So we're going to move into the presentation. Sorry, Edgar, I called you Edward. I called you Edgar. I apologize. Into our first presenter. We're very happy to have Mark Fries with us. Mark is a Safe Routes to School coordinator for San Bernardino County's Public Health Department. He has 25 years of construction management experience. He spent 5 years working in bicycle and pedestrian advocacy and is also the founder of the Inland Empire Biking Alliance. He has over 3 years as a Safe Routes to School coordinator for the county's public health department and has been involved for 6 years in the Active Transportation Network. In addition, Mark has served as an evaluator for the Active Transportation Program, Sustainable Communities Grant, and Transportation Development Act applications. Mark, can I turn it over to you?
Hello, got me? Are we there?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you great. Thank you.
It's actually asking me if I want to leave. I don't know why it's doing that. All right.
Don't
hi,
leave.
everybody. Good. The slides are already up. I see the slide. That's perfect. First, I have to make an announcement that I am in this presentation is not representative of the county. I am not representing the county in this role. It's more of a, I was asked from several people to do this on just more of my background and how my method of operation in the community. And so I'm going to kind of get into that. So the title of this, Immersion into Community, Make It Impersonal, I'm really trying to get people to understand that, you know, in order to get anything done in any aspect locally, we rely on electeds and staff and stuff, and if they're not actually in the community and seeing this stuff, it's really hard for them to get an evaluation. So I'm going to get into that. So next slide, as my slides disappear. All right, so got my background and all that stuff. Two things that I come from. One, I tend to be a very emotional person. I tend to be get a little activist and little thing going on in me. And then I have another side of me that is very analytical, and I look at how do we solve problems from the roots of things. And a few years, well, many years ago, as I was doing multiple things. So next slide, sorry. So one of the things as an activist and founder of Inland Empire Bike Alliance, we started doing ghost bikes. And I don't know if everybody knows, but this is a memorial towards people who died biking. And it was profoundly emotional for me. It led to a lot of issues personally, and but it also led to a lot of growth. And one of the things, like, there's a lot of infrastructure needs, and that was brought up in Anika's moments she was speaking, and there's too much needs to be done right away. And I realized, like, there's a prevailing underlying problem that needs to be addressed, and it's a behavioral one. So for like 7 years, due to many other interests, I got heavily involved in behavioral sciences and trying to find the roots of why we have so many more problems in certain areas, especially poor areas and disadvantaged communities. And there's a lot of things there, and I can't get into. I mean, I've done so much of this stuff. It would be really hard for me to get into all those things. But I'll give you one example of that I use quite often that we can start to look for solutions. So in behavioral science, neuroscience, they look at, like, where we draw attention to. So as a driver, you drive down a road, you have your 5 senses, right? And it is, your brain focuses its attention is drawn to wherever it gets the most stimuli from. And as a driver, you're pretty much running on one sense, sight now, because the car, you can't hear, you can't smell, you can't, there's so many, and even vision, right? A lot of your vision is directed into the cab now. And hence why the cell phone has become such a ubiquitous problem in all aspects. And recognizing that behavior is where we start from. It's not like, when I address the community, I never say, people aren't evil. They're not just narcissists. People just don't care about each other anymore. No, it's a function of the brain and how it develops. And so when we start to look things from that aspect, we start to have a little bit more compassion towards each other. And I think that's important in order to find solutions, because very often you get into community meetings, you get into especially political, city council, it becomes very emotional. And that's part of life, and that's true. But in order to find solutions, we kind of like got to scale it back. And that's where I kind of like try to deal with the community and have that engagement. Next slide, because that's where we kind of go into. So yeah, that dealing with communicating with the the general population that does not deal in government. And one of the other peer exchanges, somebody said, we tend to talk in acronyms and very technical terms. I always call that governese. And getting away from that is part of it. But as those people, those professionals that work in government, they have to speak in those terms too, because there's legal reasons why too. And one of the things that's really tough is, like, I see both sides of this this disconnect between the community and the professionals. Professionals have obligations to their job itself and what their commitments are, but there's legal obligations the community doesn't really understand. And I think it's important that we could do a better job of letting them know that that you're a human being. You have your obligations to work. You have your careers. You have that stuff. And it's really hard sometimes. But when I sit down with people in the community and have that conversation with them, they're like, okay, yeah, I forget about that sometimes. Yeah, I do realize that they have a job to do, and allowing us that time and space to make those opportunities of true understanding with each other. We do this in so many other ways, and I think all relationships become personal once you're engaged in anything like that. And that hence why I said to making this stuff personal. I find it, a lot of the times, oh, you know what, next slide will get me into this. And so, yeah, so that personal involvement in your community is the greatest thing you can do. I find that, not just on those opportunities when there's an event occurring, but a lot of my profound movements especially in San Bernardino and Redlands, had been absolutely going out and just having lunch with somebody and getting to know them on a personal level. I mean, they've shared life stories with me. I share life stories with them. That level of trust is starting to build up from there. And this is not, in no way am I suggesting you're trying to manipulate a situation. Go in this with an honest heart. I mean, people see that, and when you start to care for them, that comes across, and then they care for you, what your job is. And I think the more interpersonal relationships we have like that, that's where I've had my most success. And then the more you outreach to different parts of the community, like I know the arts community, I know the local businesses, the local students, the kids going to school. I mean, I used to ride, I don't even have kids, but I did a bike train for a local school. They say, hey, do you know what, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? And, I still know those students around my neighborhood till this day. And that is where it starts. I don't know, like there's so much more to it, but a lot of this seems, well, yeah, those all make sense, but maybe we don't see that anymore. Maybe sometimes we get behind the screens a little too much. We get behind, the cover of the law, and we forget that there's personal people that are dealing with their own issues, and sometimes they don't know these things. In this area, especially in Southern California, trying to get a traffic circle, and it seems like it would take an act of God sometimes, because people have such an aversion to them. But I think, there's reasons, because it's something of change. And as we have those conversations about stuff like that, if you built that trust up with people beforehand, they're most likely to say, well, you actually know what you're talking about. And I thought I knew what I was talking about, but because we have this relationship, I'm more open to listen to you. And a lot of times we want to just, the public wants to tell us what to do, and we want to tell the public what to do. And it becomes this continuing conflict. And I think we need to scale it back, kind of have that moment. But yeah, the emotional part always comes up. Hey, I'm guilty of it, and we'll continue to be guilty of it. Next slide. I remember. So yeah, the tools for cooperation is kind of the stuff I've hit on. The creating a larger community. And like I said about the arts department stuff, like one of the things the little moments of pride is like getting, this group needs this, and the arts project is working on this. I know a grant, and therefore, hey, you know what? We could actually both partner with this, and we'd have a better opportunity for this grant. those are important. Second point, know your limitations. Failure of mine over and over again, but I'm starting to learn as I get older, is not to like overextend myself, do what I can with what I have. And then understanding the larger issue, I think the commissioner, we talked earlier before she was speaking, and I think she's gonna hit on a lot of stuff. Understanding the broader plan and getting that across to the public is very important. You know, SCAG does all these plans and stuff. We do local plans. There's so many plans out there, but I think they seem very logical and responsive to us. Like, yeah, okay, this all, but for the public, it's a little too big. And so, you know, understanding the large issue and how to communicate that. This one is a big one. I can't. The next, address behavior in the built environment. Wow, that is such. This more goes towards like the engineers in our community. Engineers are great because they have the MUTCD and they follow the MUTCD because that's what they have. That's the way we do it. That's the way it's been approved. Blah blah blah. But behavior doesn't work that way. Humans' behavior is constantly changing, and if our environment doesn't change to those needs, we're losing. We have a losing battle. We're just going to hide behind a book of codes, and we're not going to solve these problems. And I hope at some point we get the engineering department will start to look outside of their box of numbers and stuff and start to look into disciplines like human behavior. If you look at, I mean, there's a reason Madison Avenue and the advertisers, their jobs work. I mean, it works strictly because they know how to make money. They know how to influence people. Engineers got to figure out how to influence people and take a page out of that book. And then the most important thing is, you know, take time to enjoy time with your community. I think, you know, it's not unusual for me to or see me with the people of San Bernardino, Redlands and stuff, be it electeds, be it local activists, or just a student group. I will go out, not with the student group, have a beer, have lunch, sit at a park, whatever, you know, throw a Frisbee around, it doesn't matter. All those things matter in the long run of having that engagement long-term with your community. And that's all I got for you today.
Thank you so much, Mark. Before I see some clapping, some celebrating, curious if any of the attendees have a question that they'd like to pose for you before I jump into ones I have. And if you do have a question, please type it into the chat. I'll get going while we anticipate that. How do your learnings and your study are pretty unique in our fields, and I'm curious, given the work that you've done and the learning that you've done, how you would respond to this question? How do you enter into communities, engage them with respect, or how do you recommend the engineers that you reference or agencies and organizations do that? Like, what are your key observations as the best way to start building these personal relationships, given that we're representing these bigger agencies sometimes?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a simple one. If you have one community member ask you a question, and engage in that. I mean, long engagement. I mean, you get off the topic too. That's that. You know, we get myopic. We're trying to solve a problem, one little problem, but all those problems, we know this now about homelessness. You know, a great one is, you know, we tend to re-victimize or let me rephrase that. We tend to put a lot of onus on poor people, on poor behaviors and poor choice decisions. But when you're constantly under stress of financial problems, we show that no matter who you are, you're going to make poor decisions because that stress leads to bad outcomes. And so expanding upon, you know, understanding like little things that you can do, having those further conversations beyond the myopic part, because there's always underlying issues with anything. And I think broadening those conversations really helps. Does that make sense? I know I tend to ramble sometimes.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And then I think particular to San Bernardino County, can you provide some insights as to what you believe are some of those broader paths of conversation that our safety professionals need to be you know, facilitating? What are the key issues in San Bernardino that um, that we need to anticipate having conversations about, that so as to avoid wanting to try to keep moving
Yeah.
them to our this myopic vision that you described?
I would say, so I think, I hate putting, I'm going to do it anyhow. The city of San Bernardino got to upgrade all their signalizations, and but they're still using old technology, and I find that just so like, can't we find something better? And I know there's better out there, but we get stuck in that framework of like, well, this is the way we've always done it. And so why there are new technologies that are out there that uses AI, and the AI is phenomenal. I mean, if there's a reason social media is successful, is because it's learning from us and our behaviors. So if we found other ways to enhance our signalizations and any traffic control device using technology that's based in our behavior, why not use it? I mean, I just find it just to be frank, irresponsible not to.
Thank you for that example. Are there any key practical limitations to personal relationship building that you've come across in your practice, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I mean, how I overcome them, just time. I'll go to that one, but just so, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I had to put 42 ghost bikes out in 1 year, and they were for from an 8-year-old in San Bernardino to a 71-year-old businessman in San Bernardino, and 3 of them were friends of mine. So the ghost bike was at one time very identifying for me to like get the message out, but it comes at a gigantic personal cost. So that's those limitations, learning those. Yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was, to be honest, an emotional breakdown. So yeah, and I forgot what was the rest of that question.
I mean, that you fully answered the question, and I appreciate you sharing that experience with us. Anika, I'm going to thank Mark for his presentation and turn it over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mark, for that presentation. Now I'd like to welcome Nathan Mustafa. Nathan Mustafa, I apologize. Nathan Mustafa is a registered civil and traffic engineer and certified planner. Nathan currently serves as the Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Riverside, with oversight of traffic engineering, field operations, and mobility planning. Nathan additionally serves as the Office of Environmental Stewardship for the city's Office of Sustainability. And Nathan has sought and managed millions of dollars in grant-funded capital projects, including the recently constructed Active Transportation Program projects and Magnolia Avenue fiber optic project. Nathan oversees the operations of the city's Traffic Management Center, the University Avenue Innovation Corridor, and the city's over 450 signalized intersections and lighted devices. I'll turn it over to Nathan.
Thank you. Again, I'm with the City of Riverside and very thankful to be here with the group today. We can go ahead and get started. I'd just like to talk to all of you about what we do at the city and some of the positive outcomes that we've had recently. This is a little photo of our traffic engineering team at one of the in-house GoHuman style events that we hosted pre-COVID, and it was the last big fun thing we got to do out with the community prior to COVID. We've had a lot of virtual events since then, but this team does a lot of mobility planning, working on a lot of citywide planning documents that are specific to transportation and also those that are non-specific to transportation. We host events. We also ensure that upcoming private development is compliant with our standards for pedestrian and bicycle safety, which is now, as of next week, going to be compliant with our upcoming Complete Streets Ordinance and Active Transportation Master Plan. Next slide, please. This same team is also responsible for the plan check and the in-house design for a lot of many miles of roadways in the city, and our over 400 traffic signals, working on timing those and the communications in between them. We administer our grant projects in-house, but we largely do the design in-house. We also have recently deployed several quiet zone crossing projects that this team was involved in. Next slide, please. And then finally, we also handle the operations. So you'll see that some of the people in this photo are from the very first photo. So this group has to be diverse in their thought and skill set. They also handle our neighborhood traffic management in addition to the management of the traffic signal system, handling speed zones, schools, studies, deploying pilot programs, and special event traffic control for some of our major events like the Festival of Lights. Next slide. So I'd like to walk through kind of how all three of those components of our transportation, traffic engineering, and mobility planning team, how those are implemented and what kind of results they've achieved in the city. This is just a little snippet from our active transportation master plan. It's part of a larger document that I've spoken about before at a previous GoHuman event. It's called the PACT. It's a pedestrian target safeguarding, active transportation master plan, complete streets ordinance, and trail master plan update. That's the PACT and PACT. It is a large document, but it really gave us an opportunity to look at top down across the board. What are our alternative transportation needs here in the city of Riverside? And we're very proud that it is the first infrastructure planning tool that we're adopting in the city that really looks at health and equity as a central component beyond the traditional safety metrics of collisions and collision frequency. We also look at things like air quality in partnership with the University of California, Riverside's Center for Environmental Research and Technology. And we also factored in a point structure that ensures that we're investing more in communities where there are either low-income residents, where students are eligible at a higher rate for free and reduced meal programs. And we also factored in those areas of the city that are the highest burden areas and in relation to the CalEnvirus Green tool. So we're glad that we were able to look at that as part of our plan and really bake it into our tiered recommendations. And it's going to result in us investing sooner in communities of need in our city. Next slide. I don't know if the slide has changed. Okay, there we go. So now I'll talk a little bit more about neighborhood level planning and engagement. Beyond that broad document, as part of that, we have to really do focused planning inside of neighborhoods. So I'm just going to talk through what we've done in one of our underserved communities, the East Side, here just to the east of downtown in the northeastern portion of our city. Also falls within the city's innovation district. We've done a lot of on the ground engagement with community members and really immersed ourselves in that community to achieve some positive results. We started off by just routinely attending meetings where community members are at and reaching out to them. And that kind of manifested in us going out and conducting a walking audit. We were sure to have bilingual materials, and this is actually a walking audit form that's available through the AARP that we used that we found to be very useful. And so anyone wanting a good walking audit tool, we made some slight modifications and translated it, but the AARP has that freely available for anyone who would like it. Next slide, please. We also, like I mentioned, have attended community meetings, grand openings for murals and art alleyways that we worked to help realize in the community. We hosted a GoHuman event. That's that lighted tunnel that you see down in the middle that I'm very happy actually resulted in real infrastructure improvements in our community. That's me with the giraffe costume. We had a clean and green Halloween event in the city. And just to speak what Mark mentioned, to speak to what Mark mentioned earlier, really immersing yourself in the community and building that community trust is invaluable. Being there, whether it's not necessarily have to be on your holidays, but on important days for the community that may overlap with when you would have had personal time with your family, getting your family involved. You know, that's my kiddo running in the art alleyway. And, you know, you try to be a good neighbor in every neighborhood in your city that you work for. And it can be demanding, but it results in immense benefits for communities because you really see their need and you can partner in projects as they roll out and you have that community trust. One of the exciting things that we did in this area was we also developed a web app that used the Esri platform to let residents communicate the efforts that we were trying to push in the neighborhood with the Riverside's residents of the East Side Active and Leadership Community Group. That's called the Real Community Group, their leadership team in the community. And we collaborated with them to share a message about climate change, its impact on the community, and solicit feedback from residents. And they were able to input their thoughts onto a map directly on their phone or on tablets that we took door to door. And that was done in preparation for a grant application. Next slide, please. A lot of these efforts ultimately resulted us in securing 2 grants, one through the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, another one that was also through AHSC, and also the Transformative Climate Communities Program. These 2 maps overlap, even though their color palettes are different. The roadway networks there, we're showing the same community right there. And so we are very fortunate through our engagement to have received funding to roll out a very comprehensive range of art alleyways, bike share stations, 2-way cycle tracks, cool pavement, upgraded pedestrian crossings to be high visibility with accessible pedestrian signals, and other cool stuff like a solar shaded walkway that has some lighted artwork at night. We're designing all of that right now in collaboration with the community and very excited to build that out soon. It's going to provide increased resilience and climate relief for the community and also make the community more accessible for them through active transportation. Next slide, please. So on a really micro level, you know, it's a broad community improvement. We also engage on things like just improving individual intersections. We meet with the community regularly to talk about their needs. We are out when the kids are walking to school. The neighborhood has a great kind of chaperone program and parent oversight that we collaborate with. And they developed a list of intersections that they felt could use improvements. We collaborated with them to say, hey, maybe these are great fits for traffic circles. Next slide, please. We were able to secure some ATP funding for it. One of the big things for neighborhood traffic circles is we know that there's a level of community doubt. So even if we had, you know, strong community support with the residents we had met with, we know that there will be those that maybe aren't as engaged that will have questions. We had our own questions about how they'd operate. So we made sure that we did a little pilot, marked them out, set them up with delineators, fit larger vehicles through to satisfy our own engineering curiosity, but also to document for the residents and other folks like our fire department that, hey, we know that we could fit large vehicles through here. And the Riverside Transit Agency was very helpful in having a bus for us to test that out before we deployed them. Next slide, please. And this is how they look completed. We deployed 5 within the East Side community. We feel that they've made a very positive impact on the speeds in the neighborhood, compliance at the intersections, and awareness of the pedestrian crossings. Next slide, please. It's also important when you're working to deploy these kinds of improvements in neighborhoods to just continually follow up to make sure that you've met the community need, make sure that you do more to educate the community about their use. We recorded a little video with a council member of the ward and had members of the community at that meeting to not only talk about the process that we went through with them to get the grant funding and develop the design, but also to provide their endorsement of the improvements. And it's really helpful to have the community leaders on board and put that up on social media so that residents can see, hey, these are people that I know and I trust in my community, and they're supportive and appreciative of the improvements that they worked to enact in their neighborhood. So they're so happy with the traffic circles by and large that residents are working to adopt them and place art in the center of the traffic circles. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. Just had a few other cool projects that we're working on right now in that community or very close to that community. That lighted GoHuman temporary tunnel I showed you ultimately manifested in us changing out the lighting in one of our freeway undercrossings in Caltrans right of way and dedicating it to our first responders. It really improves the link between the East Side community and the downtown. We recently opened up a two-way cycle track near the university out towards the edge of the East Side. And we've established our innovation corridor where we're testing smart signals and connected vehicle infrastructure along the University Avenue right through the heart of the East Side. Next slide, please. And we also are happy to have opened up the Iowa Avenue Class 4 bike lane. Again, that's right on the periphery of the East Side in our innovation district. That is going to provide a great connection for East Side residents down to the Canyon Crest Town Center shopping center, and just a nice link that's safe for recreation. It's great separated bikeway with bike signals at either end, first in our city. Very happy with how it turned out and hope that anyone who's interested can come check it out. And I think that is it. Next slide. So just thank you, and I'm here for questions. Here's another one of our art alleyways that we're very happy to have put out, and just happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that fantastic presentation, Nathan. I feel like you showed us so many very, very wonderful and successful examples, and I'm amazed at the scope of work that you guys have been able to accomplish. I think we probably have time for maybe one question. I'll see if just anyone in the audience wants to add anything to the chat and ask a quick question of Nathan. And if not, one question that I just had is you've shared a lot of really fantastic successful examples. And I was curious, what types of challenges have you encountered in this work, and how have you worked to mitigate those as you work to produce these fantastic projects hand in hand with the community?
One of the biggest challenges that I think we will never find our way out of is the age-old conflict between parking and bike lanes. And we've done our best. You can see in the image behind me that we actually deployed a parking protected two-way cycle track, which left the parking in place. So we found some ways to preserve parking, but that does come at the expense of other space in our road. So what we've done to kind of combat that is, one, make sure that we have conversations early and frequently when it's not possible to have both, and engage with business owners and residents about, maybe meeting halfway and having time restricted parking where it's just not possible for the community to completely take away parking. And we've baked that into our active transportation master plan. We also got a little more aggressive in our complete streets ordinance in terms of narrowing lane widths and really unlocking a lot of the space that's just sitting there. We've got 14+ foot lanes. That's a lane and a bike lane, or almost. And so, there's a lot we can do with the space that we have, and just working to maximize that and get people used to that is another challenge, but one that ultimately results in more infrastructure for more people and reduce speeds on the road. So we think it's a win-win.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Nathan. Now I'm going to turn it over to Drew to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. The title of our next presentation is Moving the Needle Forward Toward Equity in Transportation. Michelle Martinez will be our speaker. Commissioner Martinez has served for 12 years as council member in the city of Santa Ana between 2006 and 2018. During this time, she became the first council member to serve as president of the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, the first council member to serve as president of SCAG, and the youngest woman to serve as the mayor pro tem for the city of Santa Ana. Using her 15 years of public policy experience and her influence as a regional and national leader, Michelle has drawn on her experience as a former elected official and her extensive network of relationships to support her life's purpose, to put people first and create healthy, vibrant, and sustainable communities, and to collaborate with municipalities, private, and nonprofit sector to identify and scale viable 21st century solutions. Thank you, Michelle. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Drew. And before I begin, I would be remiss if I didn't, give a shout out to a couple of folks as I talk about, active transportation in Orange County, in particular, where I served in Santa Ana. But none of this would be possible if it weren't for my education with the Southern California Association of Governments and them taking a leap of faith, and specifically Hassan Arcada and the regional council when I pushed to move safety. Active transportation wasn't a big conversation back in 2010 or 2016. It started to elevate the conversation, but safety. And I remember there was a time where, we could support your resolution, but we don't have any money for this. We don't know how far this is going to go. And I think today in 2021, I think the GoHuman campaign is working. It has brought in various jurisdictions together to move the needle forward as it pertains to equity and active transportation beyond just Orange County, Santa Ana, I think throughout the entire SCAG region. So I just want to commend the SCAG staff and the consultants that have been doing this work because it's making a difference. And progress is slow and it's never perfect. But one thing that's important for us to recognize is that we're centering people. And that's important, engaging the people that are going to be using this infrastructure and educating them so that they have the power to be informed and to advocate in their communities. And I also want to thank, obviously, my former colleagues on the Santa Ana City Council and my staff and the community as a whole, and specifically our young people through KidWorks. None of this, which I'm going to talk about, is possible with one member of a city council. It takes champions at all levels. It takes champions at the grassroots level. It takes champions at the staff level, and then obviously champions at the policy level to move that needle forward. And so I want to start off with this quote, which I think it's really meaningful and impactful as we talk about how do we center, people first. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. And that's from Margaret Whitley, somebody that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. She's a systems thinker. And that when I decided to champion active transportation, I truly knew that I was one member of the council that was gung-ho, but the rest of the members of the council were very lukewarm. And so I realized early on that I had to get my staff involved and understand what my public works directors specifically and engineers, what their perception was in Santa Ana, and then more importantly, how do I educate the community and engage them? And so as we talk about equity, I want to state that equity is not a one size fits all. And sometimes when we set policy, either at the federal, state, and even regional levels, we tend to intervene into a system, and I'm a systems thinker. And so when I look at the system as a whole, typically we intervene in very shallow ways, or we have ways of us intervening into the system, as Mark said earlier, about behavior change, a paradigm shift. That is the most difficult challenge that we have today as government, because behavioral change is not easy. So it's very easy to set a policy, to set a program, and pat ourselves on the back. But if no one is utilizing those tools, no one's utilizing those programs, and we set policy, or we put plans together, they just sit, in someone's desk, we didn't accomplish anything. And so I want to make it clear that, equity, and as I sit on the California Transportation Commission, want to give out a shout out to Joe Liu and the chairwoman, Hillary Norton, and the rest of the staff and the commission for really moving equity forward. But really what equity means, and I've said this time and time again, for those of you that know me, it's access to right information, to data, to resources and opportunities, and meeting the people where they're at. So this one size fits all, traditional way of us thinking in government is changing over time, and the California Transportation Commission is moving in that direction, and I'm excited about what the state is going to be able to do as it pertains to equity. We can change the slide here. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start off with this slide, specifically focus on the Santa Ana Safe Mobility Plan, because transparency and honesty matters. So when we're talking about, traffic safety, about active transportation, this slide here, before we even embarked on this plan, we had put this map together with my former city manager at the time. He was the public works director. His name was Raul Godinez. This was like in 2014. I already had asked him to put this map together for me of where all the crashes were occurring in the city. And he put it together, and we did a tour to our legislators, to SCAG, and shared it with our local with my local colleagues, and they were in shock, and they're like, "That's not accurate. That's too many people." And I said, "Look, the facts don't lie here. Santa Ana since the early '90s has been the third city, sometimes even the fourth, with the highest pedestrian fatalities in Southern California and California, period. First is San Francisco, Los Angeles, and then many times it was Santa Ana. And reasons being, Santa Ana, most of our residents don't have access to a personal vehicle. And I want to say it's 53 to 54%. Again, I've been out of office since 2018, but I have a lot of this information in my head as I went around touring this map. But what it really showed our residents, my colleagues, and the general public was that we had to be transparent, we had to be honest about our system, and that the way we were making investments were not helping the people we talked about, the people we cared about. And more importantly, who was responsible? Because when you look at roads, when we look at our system, most times, the pressure is put on local government. It's not put on the state government. It's not put on the county. It's not put on the regional entity. It's put on the local government. But you have transportation agencies like in Orange County, the Orange County Transportation Authority, which is responsible for a lot of the major arterials, right? And I'm not an engineer, and I do my best to understand an engineer's approach. I do my best to understand plans and laws that are in place. But quite frankly, many times we want to pass the buck. We want to say it's this person's fault, that agency's fault. And the reality is that we have a system in place that we've created a one size fits all with the 85 percentile, who's responsible for certain roads, and those rules apply to everyone in the region. So in Orange County, you have Santa Ana, with its predominantly Latino, Vietnamese, majority minority community that was being severely impacted, but the same rules applied to them than Irvine. And I talk about Irvine because Irvine is a planned community, and not many people walk I see folks that bike in Irvine, but not many of them take the bus. The people that are taking the bus, biking and walking are people that are working in, that live in Santa Ana, that are commuting to Irvine and other parts of the region. And so when I started to show and showcase where these fatalities were happening in these crashes, it was happening in arterials where there's a conversation being had today about freeways, right? And you know, how do we look at freeways differently, or how do we dismantle them, and what does that look like? But I rarely hear the conversation about major arterials, because those have become miniature freeways in our communities, and specifically in Santa Ana. You know, the speeds are very high, people are being injured. The truth is here, most of the crashes have happened in major arterials like Bristol, Warner, Grand, and the reality is that not that only we displace people to expand these arterials with more lanes, but we made the problem worse. Why? Because of the amount of speed and the amount of cars that are going through there, without realizing the percentage of residents who don't have access to a vehicle, who are walking and biking, and have to go and have to commute, either walk, bike, and or walking to a destination, which predominantly is a bus stop in our city, to get to work, sometimes didn't make it. And so, you know, after I showed all of that, and I'm very glad we were able to receive grant funding, you know, to move forward with this plan. And to put safety first. It was not just about creating the infrastructure and supporting active transportation. Our residents, in particular, the young people from KidWorks, who I really am very proud of, because they went beyond the norm of what residents do. These young kids actually did bike counts, walk counts. They did GIS data. They used Esri. They just very sophisticated, very proud. They received a major grant. They went through, you know, when I was the executive director for the Alliance for a Healthy Orange County, you know, they went through my active transportation academy. And so they learned about the funding mechanisms, about the various agencies doing their work. And so I just wanted to give out a shout out to them, because they've been able to hold down the fort as it pertains to active transportation and ensuring that the city of Santa Ana and Orange County continues to put safety first. And let me just share with you, there is, you know, I will say to you that Orange County is its own island. It is very different than cities in Southern California and or counties. You know, the car is not just king in Orange County. The car has been king throughout Southern California and California for decades and decades. But one thing is certain, that when you look at the infrastructure in Orange County, it is still much more conducive to the vehicle versus biking and walking. And we have to be truth tellers to that. And what does that mean? If we can turn the page, the screen, I want to talk about some of the initiatives about what the California Transportation is doing. But before I do that, I wanted to just conclude and saying with you all as that, you know, as we look at the speeds and the 85 percentile, and you're looking at who's responsible for that, we know that Assemblymember Friedman created a task force to look at this 85 percentile and what can be done. What I can say is that it takes champions at all levels here, that as we move at the local level and even at the regional level to trying to address equity and traffic safety, that, you know, our local engineers do have rules. They do have to comply. But at the same time, what I would say to them, and specifically Nathan, he was right on board, and which I appreciate, is that they are human as well, and they have a responsibility and a role. But what is important is that we need to center people. We cannot continue to center laws and rules that are outdated to meet the need of today. And so what Nathan and Mark are doing back in their region is fantastic. I want to share a book with you all, which is Rekindling Democracy. It's a professional's guide to a working and citizen space. This is really focused on the practitioner and how they can center the citizen in everything that they do. So whether you're a public works director at the city level or at the county level, continuing your engagement, Mark and Nathan, it's commendable. I appreciate that. But there are a lot of engineers that stay true to the black and white, and this is the law, and this is what we're going with. This is, what I have to comply with. Listening to the public and meeting them where they are is vital today. If we truly want equity, we need to ensure when we're talking about traffic safety that we are meeting them, at their places, because in certain neighborhoods, I know right before I left, I think she was a retired postal service person, and she died in one of our neighborhood streets. And we were working to put a roundabout, and we were getting funding by the Active Transportation Commission at the time. And it was big old plan. It was going to take 4 to 5 years before we even saw that. To be able to articulate that to the residents when they had one of their fellow neighbors die, they were not accepting it. They wanted action now. And so what we had to do was meet them there. We did a vigil. We talked about what our process was. We heard them out. We cried. We did everything we possibly could to continue to engage them. And we finally took the steps to do some short-term things that would help alleviate some of the traffic folks going very quickly before we got the roundabout and a traffic signal not too far from there. But what was important is that those residents wanted to know that we care deeply. And I want to encourage those practitioners that are on this call that it's important to care deeply, not just care because it's your job, but care deeply as a human being, because people's lives are at risk. And when they're out there walking, and we sometimes know that some of the infrastructure that we currently have is not adequate for those folks, and sometimes they don't have a voice. We need to be that voice. And so I just wanted to share that with all of you. And as I conclude with my last slides as it pertains to the California Transportation Commission, which is a very, I believe, the work that the work that we're doing, and want to give a shout out to our staff. Because it's a lot of work. We're not just dealing with one region, you're dealing with the entire state of California, and the entire state, whether it's Northern California or Central California, rural areas to very urban suburban areas like the city of Los Angeles or Long Beach, different needs, different concerns, different constituencies, and realizing that when we do talk about equity, which currently, we've come out with the racial equity statement, and certainly our staff could provide that to you. I'm not sure, Drew, if they shared that with you early on. If not, we can go ahead and get that to you. We currently have an equity advisory roundtable of various stakeholders, and I've been participating, and so have many of my colleagues on the Transportation Commission, to hear firsthand some of the concerns and needs throughout the entire state. And then more importantly, again, the champions at the staff level are so vital. They need the training, they need the resources. They're not perfect. We live in an adaptive society. Things are changing constantly, and they're not all over the state. And so training is so vital. And what I want to encourage those of you who are listening, that if you have something to share as it pertains to racial equity, traffic safety, active transportation, share that with our staff, because again, they could only go out so far, but they are being trained to understand the sensitivity and the needs of the 21st century. And I commend them for that. We're now also doing community. We're going to start doing community listening sessions. I want to encourage you to participate. They're going to create a public engagement guide, because engagement is vital. I tell folks that at the state level and at the commission level, we can set guidelines. We can set, laws with our legislators. But at the end of the day, if that doesn't trickle down to the locals, specifically when we're dealing with land use and zoning and parking, we're never going to change the behavior, right? You can set all the laws and intervene into the system very shallow. And I believe those are shallow points, because if the locals are not accepting and are not being educated, or the community doesn't know about that, we're not moving towards real meaningful change. And that's a paradigm shift. And we're starting to see that slowly, but we have a lot more work to do. And so we're not done. Next. So just very quickly, this is an engagement strategy and summary from the 2020-21 Active Transportation Program. Some of the workshops that were presented, I have to tell you that even during a pandemic, our staff made it a top priority to continue these engagement conversations in regards to the 2021 cycle. It hasn't been easy for any of us learning Zoom and having to engage in hundreds of Zoom calls. I think many of you who are on this Zoom have participated in many and probably Zoomed out. But the reality is that where we can provide information and look at other opportunities, please don't hesitate to be involved. We're going to continue to do more. And so the next slide, please. So one thing that I think is very important, that when we talk about equity, the focus has truly been, which I'm really excited about. And even though there's a state law that requires 25% to be from disadvantaged communities, 98% of the funds have been direct. These communities have been impacted, and more money is going to them in a positive way. And so we're meeting the threshold beyond, but we don't have enough money. And as we go towards the next slide, and when I look at safe routes to school, to see 55 projects, being produced throughout the state to encourage safe routes and safety is imperative. We definitely can do more. And I would encourage you all to continue to have your jurisdictions apply for these kinds of programs, so that we can continue to have the nexus between local government and our schools, because a lot of times we're not New York. New York controls its schools, and most of California, you have your own school boards, and they have local government has no jurisdiction over them. They typically go to the state for their approvals, not through local government. Next slide.
Michelle, I might ask you if there's a nice way to roll up in a minute so we can have some time for facilitated conversation.
And I just, here are some funding needs. As I said, lots of requests. We have a major shortfall. The CTC has requested $2 billion. We have a 500 pending final approval. Next slide. So the need is great. Here are some examples. We can pass that, because Nathan did a wonderful job in showing some different projects. So next slide. And so we conclude. I just want to encourage all of you that if you're not familiar with the California Transportation Commission, familiarize yourself, get involved, and get engaged. And with that, thank you so very much.
That was fabulous. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for being so engaging and involved in this conversation about how to make equitable investments in San Bernardino, Orange County, and Riverside County. The common thread that I heard throughout is that at this sub-regional level, relationships are key to meaningful change, and that there are many resources for us to expand our thinking and our engagement for better outcomes. We've prepared a few questions for everyone here on our panel today, but we wanted to invite any questions or comments into the chat. You may also raise your hand, and we will call on you to unmute so you can ask the question aloud if you're comfortable, and then we'll follow up with some additional questions. And there's a question here from Mark Caswell. Would you like to put your voice in the room?
There I am.
Thank you. Go ahead and ask it, please.
Oh, I forgot my question.
Oh, it's from Mark Caswell, actually.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I forgot what question I was supposed to ask.
You're good.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Drew. Commissioner Martinez, just wondering if you can provide any information on the 500 million augmentation. I know a lot of folks in this room are excited that you all had requested the $2 billion. we're awarded 500 million, but it seems like there's some next steps. And is there anything we all in this room could do to get that money out?
I know we were waiting. Our staff gave us an update at the last commission meeting. I know the governor has, signed some things. I don't know if that was approved or not. I do see Paul on the line. Paul, I'm not sure if you're able to speak and share any updates with us.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Paul Golozewski, Deputy Director of Legislation and Finance at the CTC. So the budget, it does include the $500 million augmentation. However, there is some contingency language that says essentially additional legislation needs to be passed in order for us to start awarding and access the funds. So it's still pending final approval right now. And in terms of, what you all can do, just stakeholders have been great in, making their voices heard in Sacramento about the tremendous need that we have for this augmentation.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. We're going to keep our eye on the chat for additional questions from the room. But I have a question for all of you. What are the biggest legal thresholds or standards to innovative and equitable traffic safety improvements that you face?
You know what? I'm going to be honest. At the state level, they control the 85 percentile. Things need to be changed there. I think at the local level, as we deal with our principal roads, we have some flexibility there. But when we're dealing with some major arterials, and how our funding mechanisms come down, specifically like in Orange County, the masters of arterial highways, they're, plan of master of arterial highways, which is very unique. Typically when you remove a road, a lane from a major arterial, you get penalized. Santa Ana has gone against that. And created this safe mobility plan to say, hey, we're going to do things differently because we have different needs. But when we're dealing with, major roads and having to, we don't make a lot of those decisions at the local level. It starts at the state level. And obviously I'm not an engineer. And so I don't know what all that what goes into detail. But what I can just say with you, Drew, is that we need to be more educated at the local level with our constituents so that they can continue to advocate instead of just telling, Nathan, hey, you need to do speed bumps, you need to, and not realizing what the process is, or doing these other measures that are short term and don't have long-term sustainability. And so we really need to get to the root cause of and who's in charge to make those adjustments.
Thank you, Commissioner Martinez. Mark or Nathan, would you like to address that question?
Yeah, I would say some sort of tort reform when it comes to suing government. It's like we're not allowed to make mistakes, and it really stifles innovation and assessing new avenues or new technology. Because if something goes wrong, well, let's see, you screwed up, we're suing you, and because government has big pockets, there should be some caps and stuff put in place for tort reform.
There go the best two answers to that question. But I'll just add that while we appreciate the need to have uniform traffic control devices, and it definitely does a lot to keep people safer and provide consistency on the roadways, the current measures and means for experimentation on the roadway are restrictive, and I feel like that there could be potential to establish maybe local means for approving experimentation, whether it's through someone like SCAG, or we wouldn't typically play that role in an engineering way, but something more on a local level where you can vet things with your peers and get responses out to real world needs. For example, I'll just cite things like the signage that's currently on high visibility activated crosswalks, the hawk signals. Some people struggle with that signage, and we'd like to experiment with that, but there are long processes to go through to make those things a reality. And I feel like when something makes sense, we should be able to just, stick our necks out a little bit, but due to the reasons Mark mentioned, there are serious repercussions. And so you have to play along cautious game in order to make change.
Thank you so much. 3 great and unique answers. The best way for a panel conversation. I would ask this as a follow-up. In this subregion of the 3 counties, Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino, and specifically about your work, what support structures need to be co-created with our community members to assure that planning and design efforts include the people that they are intended to serve and those who are most at risk for traffic and personal safety incidents in the public way?
I would say I call it a P4 process, and that's a people-public-private partnership. I have and so instead of a P3, a P4, since we got some engineers in the room, and typically to streamline projects in government, we utilize the private sector and call them P3s. But I think we need to center people first in everything that we do, and so we have to create processes before a plan. And a lot of times we bake in, the plan and the engagement already. Like, no, to be co-creators, they have to be part of the process, not after. And a lot of times they're part of it later on, and that's not true meaningful engagement or co-creation or co-partnership. And that's why we need to make sure that when we're focused on making any meaningful change, that we put people first.
Thank you. Nathan or Mark, would you like to contribute to any structures that would be helpful for your work?
Sure, yeah. I really loved that SCAG put out neighborhood safety grants, but anything that could be done to better prepare neighborhoods to receive grants, whether it's SCAGs or any of the other grants that I've seen that are smaller scale. I'll mention ARP again, they have smaller scale grants. Anyone or any structure that could assist with that. We do have community groups. We try to get them ready, but if there was funding to have neighborhoods better plan for themselves in the context of the citywide plan so that they're ready when these opportunities arise, I feel like that would be a benefit, so that that money doesn't go to waste and that more communities that would traditionally not have the time to just be ready for one of those grants can be prepared.
That I'm still mulling over the question. Those are great responses. Yeah, I have to really think about that a lot longer. So I'm sorry, I'm going to forego giving you an answer.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to our panelists for these great presentations, thought-provoking, as well as for some conversation to help us think about how to move forward with our work. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Anika.
Great, thank you so much. Those were great answers to that discussion. I appreciate your thoughtful responses and also your fantastic presentations. We're now actually going to switch it over and wrap things up. I think we don't have enough time for a facilitated group discussion today. So Edward, if you don't mind pulling up the final slides, that would be great. So thank you all so much for participating in today's traffic safety peer exchange. As we're kind of wrapping up here, one thing that I just want to ask, everyone here in the audience is, what is one takeaway that you have from today's session? It could be something that stuck with you from one of the presenters, or something that built upon, some existing knowledge that you had in your head. But think of that one takeaway. And if you just want to drop that into the chat, I'd love to see, what are people's responses as I kind of go through these wrap up slides. Something I just really had as a takeaway for today was this, I was just about to say that people first. I really love this co-creation and this, I felt like I very much heard the strong narrative of both the importance of co-creation, the people first, and that you can't really do anything for the community without the community. I think making sure that, you're hand in hand with the community doing this work is crucial in moving forward. So I'm curious to see what you all think is your one takeaway. So just drop that into the chat. would be great. And as mentioned at the onset, we will be sharing all presentations following today's session to all registered participants. And later this month, we'll also be posting recordings from all of the traffic safety peer exchanges. We'd also encourage you to consider participating in another peer exchange. And we'll be holding about one a week through mid-August. Finally, we've shared those links within the chat itself. And if you have any questions or comments following today's presentation, you can reach out to our project team, Courtney Aguirre, or John Overman at Cambridge Systematics. And you can also reach out to any of the speakers directly. I see that Anna has dropped into the chat that something that she took away from today was the importance of getting to know the community that you're serving. And then also Keith said people first as well. I don't know if anyone else has anything else that they'd like to drop in there, but I think that's all that we really have for today. I really just want to say thank you again. And we hope that you stay safe and healthy. And we have another one here I see from Glenn to engage with the California Transportation Commission. Thank you, Glenn. And thank you. Thank you. I think that's it for today. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And take care.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.